In the south side of Chicago, there's a small 24-hour diner called Danny's Diner. This quiet sanctuary serves only taxi drivers, hospital workers, and restless night owls during the late hours. Nobody knows that the cook working in the kitchen can save lives while preparing meals. But tonight, Daniel Rodriguez's true skills will be revealed. Daniel Rodriguez placed a hamburger patty on the grill at Danny's Diner and glanced at his watch. It was 2:47 a.m., and the diner was fairly quiet. Only two nurses working the late shift sat at the corner table, while a security guard fresh off his night shift occupied a stool at the counter. 42-year-old Daniel had been working as the night cook at this small diner for the past 4 years. Growing up in Chicago's South Side, Daniel had struggled with hardships throughout his life, but he learned about real hardship in the military. Despite his broad shoulders and strong arms, Daniel was a quiet and humble man. Customers enjoyed talking with him. He was always cheerful, always helpful. Nobody knew about the 18 years he'd spent in special forces. Nobody knew about the countless covert operations in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria. Daniel Rodriguez was actually Master Sergeant Daniel "Danny" Rodriguez. He had served 18 years in the 1st Special Forces Group, one of the most elite members of the Green Berets. Hostage rescue, counterterrorism, deep reconnaissance. His name came up on the most dangerous missions. He was the recipient of 3 Purple Hearts, 2 Bronze Stars, and 1 Silver Star. 4 years ago, his final mission in Syria had changed his life. During an operation to rescue American journalists held by ISIS, his team had been hit by a suicide bombing. Daniel was the sole survivor. That night, he had lost 6 friends. He was diagnosed with PTSD, but refused treatment. He left military life and returned to Chicago, dedicating himself to the kitchen. Cooking brought him peace. Creating something with his hands, feeding people, giving life. It was very different from war. "Danny, can I get another coffee?" called out Mike, the security guard. Mike Patterson, 52 years old, worked night security at the Sears Tower. He was a former Chicago police officer who had worked the streets for 25 years before retiring last year. But retirement hadn't suited him, so he had returned to work. He got along well with Daniel. Both were men who didn't talk much and had experienced life's hardships. "Sure thing, Mike. Coming right up," Daniel said, heading toward the coffee machine. The nurses sitting at the corner table came from Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Lisa and Carmen both worked in the emergency room. After their night shifts ended, they would come here and chat until dawn. Daniel knew them. They always ordered the same things. Lisa got cheese omelet. Carmen got pancakes. At that moment, the diner's bell chimed. Even at this late hour, the sound of the door chime seemed different. 4 men entered. Daniel's experienced eyes immediately noticed these weren't ordinary customers. The first was in his 40s, short-haired, with a tight build. His eyes constantly scanned the surroundings. His movements were coordinated. The second was younger, probably in his 30s, but had the same disciplined posture. The third was large, with tattoo marks visible on his neck. The fourth appeared to be the group's leader, calm but dangerous, every step calculated. More importantly, there were bulges under their jackets. They were armed, and their movement patterns were the type Daniel recognized from his Special Forces experience. These were professionals. The men quietly spread throughout the diner. The leader positioned himself by the door, his eyes continuing to watch outside. The second approached the nurse's table. The third sat next to Mike. The fourth came straight to the counter. "Good evening," the leader said to Daniel with a cold smile. There was a slight accent in his voice, probably Eastern European. "Time to close up, don't you think?" Daniel handed Mike his coffee, while catching the danger in the man's eyes. This wasn't just a robbery. This was something much more serious. "Diners open 24 hours, buddy. What do you want?" Daniel said, trying to keep his voice calm. "We have a small matter to settle between us," the man said. opening his jacket to reveal his weapon. We don't want innocent people to get hurt. Daniel's pulse quickened, but his expression didn't change. 18 years of military training had taught him not to let his face be red. The men were targeting Mike. Probably as a former police officer, Mike was a witness to something or had important information in a case. Lisa and Carmen had hugged each other in fear. The coffee cup in Mike's hand was trembling, but there was a determined expression on his face. He was a former cop. He had experienced these types of situations. Listen, buddy, Daniel said calmly. I just cook food here. I don't want any trouble. Smart man, the leader said. Then stay out of it and nobody gets hurt. Daniel's mind was working quickly. 4 armed men, 3 innocent civilians. The man closest to the door, the leader, was probably the most dangerous. The man next to Mike was large, but his position was poor, vulnerable to attack. The one near the nurses looked young, might be inexperienced. The man across the counter, an open target. But Daniel Rodriguez wasn't just a cook. He was a former Special Forces soldier who had served in the world's most dangerous places for 18 years. And now innocent lives were at stake. Daniel took a step toward the kitchen. Can I offer you anything? Coffee, sandwich? The leader laughed. Not the time for courtesy, cook. At that moment, Mike tried to stand up. Listen, sit down, shouted the man next to him, pointing his weapon at Mike. Daniel saw his opportunity. While the leader was looking at Mike, Daniel threw the hot contents of the coffee machine he had grabbed into the leader's face. As the man screamed in pain, Daniel hurled the large meat cleaver he had pulled from under the counter at the man across from him. The diner erupted into chaos. The nurses screamed and ducked under their table. Mike instinctively hit the floor. His former police training had kicked in. As the man by the door tried to draw his weapon, Daniel threw a large steel pot from the kitchen at his head. Kill them all, the leader shouted, suffering from the burns on his face. Daniel took cover in the kitchen and planned his strategy. 4 armed men, 3 innocent civilians, and only himself in between. But the kitchen was his territory, and here, everything was a weapon. He had been working in kitchens for 15 years, counting his time in the military, where he had also served kitchen duties. He knew the location of every tool, the properties of every ingredient, and more importantly, Special Forces training had taught him to turn any object into a weapon. When the first man tried to enter the kitchen, Daniel poured hot grease from the grill over him. As the man recoiled in pain, Daniel struck his head with a large meat tenderizer. The man passed out. The second man opened fire, but Daniel was already moving. He took cover behind the industrial oven and began throwing knives from the kitchen rack. His aim was perfect. Each knife found its mark near the man, forcing him to retreat. This guy's crazy, the third man shouted. Daniel smiled. No, he murmured. I'm just a cook. He rolled the large milk kettle toward the man's legs. As the man lost his balance, Daniel pounced on him. Using a kitchen towel around his throat, he choked him unconscious. Now only the leader remained. Daniel carefully emerged from the kitchen. The leader, his eyes watering from the burns on his face, had his weapon pointed at Daniel. Who are you? The leader asked, pain and anger in his voice. I told you, I'm just a cook, Daniel said. Cooks don't fight like this. Daniel approached step by step. I grew up in Chicago. The streets are tough places. As the leader prepared to pull the trigger, Daniel suddenly moved. Years of close combat training kicked in. He grabbed the leader's gun hand, twisted his wrist, made him drop the weapon. Then with a simple but effective technique, he brought the man to the ground. It was over. 4 men on the ground, unconscious or in pain. Nobody had been seriously injured. Daniel had specifically planned it that way. He didn't want to kill anymore. Daniel picked up the phone and called 911. I need police. There's been an attempted armed assault at Danny's diner. The attackers have been neutralized. The nurses emerged from under the table. Lisa asked, trembling. How? How did you do that? Daniel shrugged. I work in a kitchen. I know how to use knives. Mike stood up and approached Daniel. Man, I don't know who you are, but you saved my life. Those guys, they're Tony Marconi's men. I witnessed their drug operations and reported them to the FBI. I was supposed to give witness testimony today. You're safe now, Daniel said calmly. When the police get here, you can tell them everything. While waiting for the police, Daniel checked on the wounded, calmed the nurses, and talked with Mike. They were all grateful to him, but also curious. Could a normal cook do such things? When Detective Ray Morrison from the Chicago Police Department arrived, Daniel was just a simple cook. He told the story, but omitted his special forces background. He only said that he had noticed the attackers and had to protect himself and his customers. Mr. Rodriguez, how did you take down 4 armed men? Detective Morrison asked. I was lucky, Daniel said, and I used the kitchen equipment well. Morrison was suspicious, but there was no evidence. He said he would investigate Daniel's background. The statement process took 2 hours. Only a small news item appeared in the media. Robbery attempt prevented at diner. Daniel's name wasn't even mentioned. The following week, Daniel was back in his kitchen cooking hamburgers. Mike continued coming every night. He now knew that Daniel made special hamburgers just for him. Lisa and Carmen also continued coming, but now they looked at Daniel differently. Daniel, Mike said one night, are you really just a cook? Daniel smiled while flipping the meat on the grill. Mike, I'm Daniel Rodriguez. I'm the night cook at Danny's Diner. I make good hamburgers. I can't make good coffee, but I'm trying to learn. What about the skills you showed that night? I grew up in Chicago, Daniel said with a shrug. You learn to survive on the streets. Mike didn't ask any more questions, but every night he watched Daniel work in his kitchen with discipline, precision, and professionalism. These weren't the skills of an ordinary cook. Weeks passed. After that night, customers who came to the diner began looking at Daniel differently. Nobody knew exactly what he was, but everyone felt that Daniel was someone special. One night, Frank Murphy, the elderly owner of Danny's Diner, talked with Daniel. Danny, I heard about what happened that night. You're a hero. No, Frank, I just protect my customers. That's my job. That's not your job, Danny. You have a good heart. But what you showed that night, that's not just a good heart. Frank Murphy, 68 years old, had been running Danny's Diner for 30 years. He had grown up in Chicago's South Side and served in the Vietnam War. He was evaluating Daniel with experienced eyes. Frank, listen, Danny, I was in Vietnam. I know you're a soldier. I don't even wonder which unit. But know this, you brought blessing to this diner. Daniel remained silent. Frank continued, I'm raising your salary, and if you want, I can offer you a partnership. Thank you, Frank, but the raise is enough. I just want to cook. After that night, Daniel's life slowly began to change. Customers at the diner showed him more respect. Late-working doctors, nurses, police officers, firefighters, they all wondered who Daniel was, but never asked. One night, a young couple came to the diner. The woman was pregnant and had pain in her stomach. The man was panicking. The hospital is too far. What are we going to do? Daniel immediately took action. I'll handle it. You stay calm. He had received medical training in special forces education. He assessed the situation. Just Braxton Hicks contractions, false labor pains, not dangerous. He calmed the woman, reassured the man. Then he drove them to the hospital in his car. Another night, an elderly man came to the diner. He was having a heart attack. Daniel performed CPR, saved his life. He stabilized the man's condition until the ambulance arrived. Another night, a young woman ran into the diner. Help me, someone is following me. Daniel assessed the situation. 2 men were coming after the woman. Daniel locked the door, called 911. When the men tried to break the windows, Daniel repelled them. He protected the woman until police arrived. These incidents further increased Daniel's reputation at the diner. He was no longer just a cook, but the neighborhood's protector. A year later, FBI agent Sarah Chen visited Daniel. Rodriguez, I need to talk with you. Is there a problem? No. Thanks to the Tony Marconi case, we dismantled a large drug ring. Mike Patterson survived and was able to testify because of your intervention that night. Good news, Daniel. I investigated your background. Master Sergeant Daniel Rodriguez, 1st Special Forces Group, 18 years of service, many medals. Daniel remained silent. I want to offer you something. Would you like to work as an FBI informant? You would be our ears in this neighborhood. Not full-time, just reporting suspicious situations. Why? Because people trust you, and you know how to protect them. Daniel thought for a long time. Would I have to stop cooking? No, that would be your best cover. I need to think about it. A week later, Daniel gave his answer. I accept. But I have one condition. Nobody will know. I'll continue to be just the cook at Danny's diner. Agreed. And so Daniel Rodriguez's new life began. Night cook, day FBI informant, but always the protector of Chicago's South Side. Daniel continued working at the same diner after that night. Every night he cooked with the same meticulousness, chatted with customers, and protected them. Nobody knew his past, but everyone felt that he was someone special. And under Chicago's night lights, in the small diner's kitchen, a silent hero continued to stand watch, ready, alert, and always prepared to act when necessary. Danny's Diner wasn't just a restaurant anymore. This was a safe harbor, a warm home, and when necessary, a solid fortress. Under the protection of Daniel Rodriguez, months later, the Tony Marconi organization was completely dismantled. Thanks to Mike's testimony, a major drug network was exposed. But nobody questioned who the real hero was that night. Daniel Rodriguez still cooks hamburgers at Danny's Diner, chats with customers, and greets everyone with his warm smile. But now everyone who comes to the diner knows this isn't just a place to eat, it's also a safe haven. And under Chicago's night lights, in the small diner's kitchen, a silent hero continues to stand watch,